Alright guys, so if you can't tell by the title of the video or the picture behind me or this here figure, today's discussion is on my man Katsuki Bakugo. So, I'm going to be completely honest, and I'm going to say that I did not like Bakugo until manga chapter like 117, 118. He was somebody I begrudgingly respected the combat abilities of, but the whole hey Deku kill yourself stuff, mid. Uh, like I really didn't like Bakugo. I was like, oh, this dude's a dick. But just like Endeavor, which this is just a testament to how Horikoshi writes, he takes something, make sure you don't like it. In fact, if you look into the supplemental materials in the manga, he straight up says he wanted to make a character that was really hard to like, and then he makes you like it. Um, so let's just like take it real quick, like journey through Bakugo and his narrative and everything that's happened with his character so far. So you get like the introduction, you get the sludge villain attack, them in like school, all these other things, you know, like middle school, him bullying Deku. That doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter anymore. We don't care about that. Like we care about it because he should apologize properly, but we don't care about that anymore. We just don't. What we do care about is what you see as we progress through the story from his first matchup with Deku, where he pretty handily defeats Deku in the fight, but loses the war, which is one of the first lessons that he gets on having to focus and what it takes to be a hero for himself. The inability to put aside his petty grudge is what cost him that round ultimately, and he realized that and had to bounce back. He decided that day, said it out loud, you know what, even if I lost today, I still need to make sure that I become the best hero in the world. And I guess that should have been like an indicator of where his character was headed for some of us, but it wasn't. Like a lot of us were still kind of like, yeah, you say that, but you're still a dick. So fast forward to the USJ attack, you know, he's out here beating up the small fry. You know, he makes it a point to show that he's not an idiot. Momo kind of commented on that during the battle exercise, but, you know, there's a difference between being fight smart and being, in general, intelligent and understanding situations and circumstances. And so his ability to acknowledge that while, yes, it was dangerous that there were so many people there and so many criminals involved, the reality is that they were so underskilled that the best course of action was to hopefully tackle the League of Villains and shut down Kurogiri to make sure that they could actually arrest everyone. So that's the situational awareness that, you know, we get going. Big galaxy brain that we're talking about. So from there, you get into the sports festival arc where you see him standing as Shoto and Deku are talking to each other about Shoto's situation with his parents and just how that whole thing is shaking out. And he doesn't look happy or like he's like, oh yeah, screw this guy. Like he doesn't look like any of those things. He actually looks like he's kind of concerned about the background of Shoto. However, Bakugo cannot express his feelings properly. One of the things that I think the sports festival showed us is that while yes, he is willing to directly state, yes, I am going to win, yes, he will come at you with the utmost confidence, yes, he will, you know, seem brash on the surface and seems like a hothead. He made it a point to focus on getting his points back during the cavalry battle instead of just tuning in and zeroing in on Deku, so that way he at least had enough points to pass before he went after Deku, which again, showing his battle acumen. Also, Monoma was very antagonizing, and Monoma is also my favorite character from Class 1B. The thing that I think was especially fascinating, though, is that as you see him fight throughout the sports festival, each opponent he acknowledges directly in some way, comments on the matchup, comments on their combat skills, and even though people like seem to think of him as like a giant jerk, he was probably one of the most respectful people throughout the entire tournament as far as acknowledging the skills of his opponent. When he went against Uraraka, instead of being like, oh, I can no-diff her, he respects her, he like lets her charge him, he tries to figure out what her strategy is, he makes it a point to just stand his ground instead of trying to like bum rush her, risking getting tapped and accidentally launching himself out of the ring because gravity no longer affects him and his weight. is not what it was 3 seconds ago, which I personally do think is why he did not go to the air during that fight. Instead, he made it a point to be an immovable fortress and let her come to him. And when he finally beats her by blowing up her meteor shower and her basically getting flung nearly out the ring, but ultimately passing out from exhaustion, he says she is not weak when called out by his, classmates, which I think is interesting that Bakugo is the most level-headed, fair, and kind of like, I guess, the least sexist in his class, because everybody else was just kind of like, oh man, you're beating up a defenseless girl. And he's like, dude, we're Hero Corps students. She's not weak. I blew her up like 10 times and she just kept coming. Clearly, anybody who can get exploded 10 times isn't a chump. Just saying. You move on to his next matchup with Kirishima, where he, bob and weaving. Because, fun fact, his fighting style is classified as outside style boxing. And you get, him like, okay, I figured it out. Like, taking the time to figure out how to beat Kirishima, acknowledging, okay, you just can't handle this war of attrition, so I'll just keep carpet bombing you because you have to block these. You can't just throw attacks while you're getting exploded. It like increases the odds of vulnerability. And so finally he was like, yeah, there we go. This is how to beat you. Assessing the situation, keeping a level head, and making sure that he himself didn't get like rocked. Respecting the strength of Kirishima, who he already had a friendship blooming with during the USJ, because the two of them were paired together as they took down, the fodder that the League of Villains brought with them. And then, of course, in the cavalry battle, when Kirishima plays into his distaste of Deku and offers to be his horse, or his front horse. Now, you move into the fight against Tokoyami, and instead of him actually, he didn't even trash talk Tokoyami. He acknowledged, oh, this is just a straight up bad quirk matchup. I'm still taking my W, but I feel kind of bad about this. Like, this isn't exactly the fairest fight. And I think that you could argue that might have been part of what was so frustrating for him when he fought Shoto. One of the things that I think he was trying to do is that he tells Shoto, I don't care about your family. I don't care about all those issues. What I care about is this tournament. And that's what you need to be focused on too. And in his own way, Bakugo was pushing Shoto to be the best he could be, even if he was saying it was for selfish reasons. When you see the sympathetic look on his face after he overhears the dialogue, I think it's indicative that he also wanted Shoto to move past those hurdles, because at the end of the day, Shoto himself isn't going to be a good hero if he can't give it his all. Heroes give it their all and try their best to win no matter what. They don't hold back their quirk because their dad is mean to them or was abusive. I'm not going to downplay how bad Endeavor was. Just check out my other video on Endeavor, actually. And so you see him like constantly going through these phases, constantly giving respect and wanting the respect of his opponents, which he felt like Shoto did not give him by not trying his absolute best, which in a way I actually agree with. I think it is kind of disrespectful that Shoto literally thought he could just beat everyone with just his ice powers and he wouldn't have to try his hardest. He actually almost got folded by Deku because of that reason. If Deku hadn't convinced him to go all out, he probably would have caught a couple more one-for-all punches to the gut and dropped out. That out of the way. I still didn't like Bakugo at this point. Like, when I read the manga arc, I still didn't like him. You move into the training camp arc, and he's not focused on heavily, like, throughout the beginning phases of that arc. He's pointed out by Pixie Bob as one of the best 4 in the class, which we already knew because he finished first in the sports festival and still would have finished second, even if you are one of those people who believes that Shoto with his fire beats Bakugo. So you see that he's acknowledged again as like a strong character. We see that, but he's also got like a temper, also knows how to cook apparently. He is like a talented individual. We get to constantly see that, play out. But the thing about that arc that was especially interesting, and I think a lot of people kind of clinched, is that he got kidnapped in that arc, specifically tying back to his rage during the sports festival, and the League of Villains thinking, oh, he's a cliche shonen rival. I guess we'll be able to kidnap him and turn him into a villain and take down the antagonist the protagonist at the end of the story. That'll be how this goes. And Bakugo gets kidnapped, tied up, gets his hands untied finally during an interrogation session, and says, "Quit the bitch assness. I'm in this to be a hero. I'm here to throw hands for justice. I'm trying to be the next All Might. I'm trying to cause the clap of a windstorm with the clap of my ass cheeks, bro. I'm trying to get swole for the right reasons." And everybody's kind of shook because everybody's kind of like, wait, I thought he was blonde Sasuke. Which, I'm going to cover that real quick. Bakugo is not blonde Sasuke. Bakugo is written far more like your average Luffy, Naruto, somewhat more comparable to Gon or Natsu, where he's loud, he's in your face, he's brash, he's direct. And the actual Sasuke would be more over like Shoto Todoroki, who's, you know, the stoic dude with daddy issues that wants to like fight people. So if anything, it's Shoto Todoroki is a half and half Sasuke who is actually blue-haired Kurapika, and Kurapika is blonde-haired some dude from something I ain't seen, more than likely. Just saying. If we're gonna do our comparisons, let's be accurate with them. So, in this moment though, that I'll admit, I got a little bit of respect for him, but I was like, yeah, you're saying you want to be a hero, but still kind of a giant prick. And, you know, so he gets rescued, of course, because he would be dead otherwise. Actually, I think if he hadn't been rescued, he would have been turned into a Nomu, and I think that was the real goal. And I think that would have been probably the most more destructive than Hood Chain or any of the other Nomu we've seen so far, because that would have been a Nomu with the quirk explosion that also could regenerate. So I could see him have possibly becoming a Nomu that could make more than just his palms explode, where maybe you'd have him like exploding his entire arm like a bomb, blowing away city blocks, and then just sprouting a new one. Kind of some terrifying stuff to really think about, because that seems to be within the wheelhouse of the Nomu. Like, that's something they would be able to do. But after he's rescued, you do the provisional license arc, which he fails. And honestly, I was very glad when he failed in the manga for two reasons. One, I still wasn't really liking him that much at that point. But two, it wouldn't have made sense for him to have passed. Not an exam that literally focuses around personality and, you know, treating people correctly and all these other things, where those are blatant character flaws that he has within him. Also notice that the main thing that caused Shoto Todoroki to fail was his temper and essentially his own psychological issues, both of them being people who were physically more than capable of becoming heroes. Shoto is stated to be as good as the average sidekick or the average pro hero, which, I mean, depending on what you're looking at, especially when you look at the Gentle arc, the average pro hero seems to be worse than the top three of 1A, because Shoto, Bakugo, and Deku are definitively the best three in the class, and Deku managed to fold Gentle, who had the Labrava buff, but the same Deku that folded Gentle with the Labrava buff, or the same Gentle that got folded by that Deku, got folded himself like 4 pro heroes the first time we saw him. So clearly Gentle wasn't like a chump, which I think is something that people should pay attention to and acknowledge, because that basically means that these UA like kids are already pro hero level, not necessarily top 10 hero level, which I think is a misconception that a lot of people have, is that they like prioritize all pro heroes as like top 10 hero level, but that's just objectively wrong. I don't know else how to put that. And so that's when you get to, you know, the episode that I actually just rewatched before doing this video of season 3, episode 23, where Bakugo finally acknowledges that he feels responsible for All Might and the end of his career, when in reality, you know, it was the passing on his quirk, passing on like the fact that his body had been destroyed by All for One when he got multiple intestines yeeted, and his respiratory system damaged, and his stomach was probably removed, if I remember correctly. Pretty sure he said he lost his stomach. All Might's diet is probably really weird. And so you get him coming to terms with the fact that he cost his role model his career. He technically cost society their main hero. The crime rate shoots up 3% in the 3 months after this, as we find out in the remedial course arc by Endeavor. And even Nato Monoma goes, how can Bakugo smile knowing that he is the reason the symbol of peace fell? Obviously this isn't true. It's not Bakugo's fault that he was kidnapped, which his terrible mother directly states it is his fault and tells him he is weak, which is something that I think a lot of people consistently overlook. As I stated in the Endeavor video, Horikoshi has gone out of his way to establish that parents influence children heavily. Bakugo's personality is very reflective of his mother, who is stated to be extremely assertive. In fact, in the manga volumes, it's revealed that the reason why his mom and dad got together is that she aggressively sought out his father and hit on him until he was worn down and agreed to date her. And if you look at the way that his dad is, he is very much like just like a little, he's a chump. Like, his quirk is kind of fascinating. It's not that great, but his quirk is the reason why Bakugo's quirk is so great. It's acid slime, where he can secrete an acid from his palms, and if he rubs them together really fast or slaps them really hard together, it creates explosions. His quirk just wasn't good enough to really let him be a pro hero, and he gave that up and moved into the fashion industry, which is an interesting divergence in career paths, but hey, we all fall into things. His mother's quirk being glycerin, which is just her sweat, like that helps her look youthful. But when they combined together, he had a special type of acid and the glycerin, and it finally gave him the ability to make explodey boom boom palms. So the thing that is important to take away, though, is that his mom in every scene yells at him in some way and usually insults him in some way. And so you notice that even like people that he's kind of friends with, he's friends with Kirishima, but he is still like, hey, dumb hair, weird hair, blah blah blah. That like belligerence is just who he is because of his upbringing, and the only way to really fix that is probably to like just keep him away from his mom. Just keep him away from that influence that consistently, because at the end of the day, his mom is supposed to be, and this is something that society perpetuates a lot, like the source of love, like the example for love. So if your mom is showing you that like belligerence and like hitting people for like needless things is the way to be, then that's how you're going to internalize love, and that's how your relationships are going to function, and that's how you're going to interact with people. The home life is imperative. Like, it is absolutely necessary to focus in and acknowledge the way people are raised. This is even focused on even more in the remedial course arc when he suggests stringing up the ringleader and having all the students throw rocks at him so that everybody knows that they're in charge. And somebody goes, wow, is that how you were raised? He's like, yeah, that's how I was raised. Like, you know, you smack the crap out of somebody and that's how you get what you want. And a lot of people kind of overlook those panels because they like to say Mitsuki's really great. It's like, oh yeah, she's disciplining her rambunctious boy, and it's like, no, 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 she's instilling these rambunctious principles into Katsuki Bakugo. And so that's the issue that he has, is that he's got a mom that literally is not, you know, teaching him the correct way to be and interact in interpersonal relationships and dynamics. His relationship with Deku is heavily flawed because he, one, doesn't understand what positive reinforcement actually looks like from a close proximity, and the psychological issue that he's developed is, one, an inferiority complex, but two, he struggles with something that I call the weight of expectations. And this is one of those things that you only really get it when you've had an idea in your head of what you need to be or what you want to be. Many 20-somethings and older go through this, where maybe they get their degree and they thought they were going to be working in a career field of their choice, and that's just not it. Like, that's not what happened, and it really messes up with their psyche. Like, you get a degree and like you can't get a job, or you thought you were going to get married and have a kid with this person and everything falls apart, and it like really messes with your head, and you start to like sometimes internalize as like self-hatred. And the reason why I say this is because when you have like friends and teachers and all these people who tell you you're a genius and you're so smart, but you go home and you're told, oh, you're too weak, you're not strong enough, you're a liability, you're an idiot. You're like, yeah, at the end of the day, you care more about the opinions of the people you spend the most time with. And so all that time, like being told he's not enough, but then being told that he is enough, but then also seeing Deku get the quirk from All Might, seems in his mind to reaffirm that he is not enough, which he himself states, I am not strong, when he talks to All Might. So you've got a character who struggles with his own like self-worth and identity, while at the same time is trying to become a hero, trying to save other people, trying to win. And this is kind of clarified even better that like these are goals, these are things that are on his radar as you progress later on down the story, because after the remedial course arc, you once again where you get to see that after being around the students more and being in these dorm systems more, he is capable of taking a back seat and becoming more humble. When he becomes the drummer for the culture festival, he fully dedicates himself to that role. Yes, he does it in a competitive way, but again, I think that is a reflection of the aggressiveness that has been instilled in him by his mother, to be aggressive about things and to be like borderline masking like positive intentions or infusing your positive intents with grumpy, angry, like surly nature. Because at the end of the day, he's like, yeah, we're gonna help everybody. We're gonna help them so hard. We're gonna help them so hard. We're gonna kill them dead with the sound. Our music's gonna be great. Like, he's ready to go in, and he's going in for a good, like, he's going in on a good thing for competitive reasons. And I think that in itself adds like a fascinating approach to him, because it shows like he can do the right things. And then he's like sitting there, and even when he goes, oh, you hypocrite, when Jiro starts to like improvise a little as she's singing, which, man, Studio Bones, I feel bad for you having to do, like, actually you guys are great, but having to come together with the song to capture that scene and, you know, really drive home, whoo, that's a project for season 4. uh, and but the fact is, he did set aside his pride. He did work with these people. And then you fast forward to the joint training arc, where we get more Bakugo focus again during the round 4, which was the shortest match. And the reason for that is because narratively, Bakugo's story is not about his power level and his skills. It is about his psyche. And that's very easy to note when you pay attention to Ida's arc about his psyche was the Stain arc. Shoto's arc is an ongoing thing, so it's sprinkled into the Pro Hero arc, it's sprinkled into the Stain arc, it's sprinkled into the Sports Festival, which was supposed to be his introduction. Shoto's like entire narrative is like throughout the story, and it focuses on like his psyche, but also his center fold training arc exam match focused on his power a bit, because he doesn't use one of his powers as well. He doesn't use his flames correctly. He does hold back and tries to rely on his ice, which is pointed out by Hononuki. So it's imperative to understand that each match had a different narrative thing that it needed to achieve. Furthermore, one of the things that I think was trying to be established is that we've always known that Sero and Jiro were good utility. We knew that Jiro was a good scout. We watched her help people get rescued during a kidnapping. We've known that Sero had good utility because he sets up traps, from watching him like climb over the building, like not the buildings, the Robot Inferno. And we've always known that Sato was strong. And so we knew that and Sato's not that smart, and he can't be that smart due to his quirk, so we knew that he would need direction and to work as backup. So when you get to that match, you see that yes, Bakugo has grown physically. It's the middle of the winter, and he was blitzed Bondo after avoiding Awase, trusting in his teammates. Also, if you notice, one of the panels, Bakugo gets the best action panels in the series. But one of the main panels that was focused was like a wide shot, and it was the one where he's flying over Awase and says, "You guys have to cover me, okay?" Because Horikoshi wanted to emphasize that he was smiling and excited and flying past this one hurdle because his teammates at his back could cover it. This is further showing his ability to trust and not just look down on his fellow classmates anymore. So, you know, he takes out Bondo, keeps going, Explodipulse, Slicey Boy, I can't remember his name right now, sorry. That's what happens when you get one shot. And then eventually goes on to Blitz Tokage and 0-point Stun Grenader and says something very important, which is, I have not changed at all. I'm still the man who's going to surpass All Might and become the #1 hero. This is not the first time that Bakugo says something like that, because he also states that when he finds out the secret of One for All and All for One, and why Deku got the power and everything that was happening there, he says, at the end of the day, nothing's changed. I still have to do the same thing to become the #1 hero. So, you have a character who is overcoming his own, you know, inferiority complexes inflicted upon him by growing up in a toxic environment where he was constantly put down, even though he was also supposed to be elevated, meaning he acts as if he knows he's the best, but deep down is afraid that he's just not good enough. And these two conflicting ideals lead to an explosion in his personality. And that's part of where that whole thing comes from. So, but it is imperative to note that he is objectively an intelligent student, 3rd best grades when we got their rankings, only behind Ida and Momo. And when he does finally get his, you know, also, actually, before I forget this, because I almost skipped past this, during the remedial course arc, it's also important to note that when he talks about, you know, I have to become the number one hero, he also acknowledges what it takes to become the number one hero. And in a sense, the symbol where he says to him, if you always look down on people, you will never be able to fix yourself. And the thing about that is that when you look throughout Bakugo's story, he was like stubbornly clinging to just becoming the number one hero by being strong, and it was after he was told you need to win by saving and save by winning that he started to really finally like the gears were turning in his head on who he needs to become. And so that's something that I'm already excited for in of itself. And this is further displayed in the first two chapters of the current villain arc, where they take on these seemingly random thieves, but they were actually Liberation Army um, underlings based on the tech they had, in addition to the fact that Sliding Ghost specifically avoided that route so that he could, give them the opportunity. And when it came right down to it, Bakugo blitzed all the underlings, grabbed the wallets, and when given the choice between taking out the bad guy or saving a citizen, he saved the citizen. Yes, he told her to go die somewhere else if she was trying to die, but that's also because she was dumb enough to stand around and watch a terrorist attack happen, essentially, and do nothing but try to take a picture. Everybody's screaming, and she's like, "Oh, it must be a snow carnival." Just saying, I probably would have snapped on her too. Um, so the thing that I think it's important to take away with Bakugo is that this is a young man, as All Might puts it, and he's working through his issues, learning how to interact with people in a healthy way. I think personally that he's got some of the best character growth in the series, from coming to understand like what it takes to work together in a team, to trust each other, to respect each other's abilities, utilize your allies appropriately. I don't think he's ever going to stop being that aggressive person. I think that there's certain things that, yep, 16, 17 years of like, this is how you communicate is hard to break. And if he does ever simmer down, it's not going to be like high school Bakugo that is calmer, because Horikoshi doesn't write BS psychological stories. It's going to be later in life Bakugo. Maybe if we get a time skip and we jump to second year sports festival, he might be like a little calmer, but he should never really lose that full firecracker potential, because that's kind of what he was raised to be. That being said, I don't think it's a problem, and I do think people miss the fact that when Deku speaks to him after his team wins round 4, the word reflex is written over his hand, indicating that like he's not even necessarily angry. In fact, he's not angry that Deku's talking to him. It's that he naturally, from all the years of like being that way, just his body was like, oh yeah, combat mode, Deku, ah. It's like, oh, no, like, and that's why they instantly like drop down into a regular conversation, because it wasn't actually malicious or anything like that. It's just how his wiring and like the nature of the dynamic and how habits work. Um, Overall, I think that the character has a lot of potential even further. I fully believe he will be a top 10 pro hero. Will he possibly die? I see arguments for him to potentially be like, dead by the end of the series. I don't know how hard Horikoshi's going to go. We did get the death of Night Eye, the loss of Lemillion's quirk. It's entirely possible that could happen. One of the things that I would like to see from this character further is now that we've seen him, get his hero license, and we've seen him grow and learn how to work with teams and all these other things, I would like to see an arc where he does have like more of the investigative, doing the working alongside a pro hero, just because I want to see his dynamic with a pro in the field, actually doing missions and seeing where he's progressing and like how his perspective is when he might actually be forced to just focus on saving someone, because a pro hero is like, this is a job for me, you need to go do something else. So yeah, I think Bakugo has what it takes to be a hero, though. What it means to be a hero to me in this series is to be a person who not only works on saving others, but also focusing on saving yourself and focusing on fixing your own problems within. Because in the same way that Endeavor has internal psychological pain, so does Bakugo that he needs to work through. And I think it's imperative that those story arcs are included in the series, because a lot of series kind of relegate character progression to, well, they got a power up, or they off-screen the journey to become a better person. So you have people like Gajeel, who leaves in Fairy Tail and comes back, and everybody's willing to be friends with him for the most part, and especially like the Levi Droy situation where they're friends with him now, and like it's really weird. And I much prefer this slow, eventual like realization to becoming friends, not the well, we fought one time and we're bros. Like at least with like Deku, it kind of makes sense that they could kind of get to a good spot, but even now they're still not like the best friends, which I think is important. And I don't even think that I don't think that people should be looking at Bakugo and Deku's like dynamic as necessarily a shonen rivalry. Because the reality is, yes, they're rivals in the sense they're both chasing the number one hero spot, but their entire writing style, like the literary approach to these characters, has been exploring the dynamic of their relationship, not necessarily them 1v1ing each other all the time or the ways they try to top each other. It's been more about the ways they learn from each other and grow together and get to know each other better, and how you can be next to someone your entire life and still not properly know them, which I think is an important lesson to also realize that just because you sit next to someone, just because you eat with them, just because you go to the movies, because you are in the same class, you could be next to someone for 15 years and know nothing about them. I realized this when I realized most of my friends didn't know anything bad about my childhood that happened before high school. And I'm 26 now, not 37, as somebody asked me after seeing one of my first videos. Thought I'd clear that up. And so it is possible for all these like things to go under the radar and just be unchecked, and you can like look at someone and be like, oh, this is definitely why, like they're just a jerk, they're just this or whatever, but they might actually have a lot of stuff going on under the surface. And I think Horikoshi is kind of exploring that, and the way like small things build up and make a person into something they don't actually intend to be. And I think that's what Bakugo symbolizes. So when you look at the quirk, his quirk's explosion. The I always say don't look at quirks like how many quirks or like the number of powers. Look at the usages, because technically people will be like, oh well, like Todoroki has two quirks. He's got ice and he's got fire, but technically his quirk is half and half. It's just got freezing abilities and it's got flame-based abilities. Bakugo's quirk is explosion. It seems to give him, well, it definitely gives him flight capabilities, gives him projectiles, like both long and short range, depending on what your definition of long range is. At the very least, he's covered mid range. It gives him enhanced strength, because you can tell that based on the way he was able to yeet Deku like 15 feet without using an explosion during their second fight. And enhanced durability based on the fact that his body needs to be able to take the explosions. So flight, speed, enhanced durability, enhanced strength, projectiles. High potential for a hero quirk. He's developing and learning as a person. So does Bakugo have what it takes to be a hero? Is he a hero? I would say yes. Katsuki Bakugo has what it takes to be a hero. Anaki out.